Today we'll talk about the bones of the thorax, and the first bone will be the sternum. So this is from Wisdom Singh, the textbook of anatomy by Dr. Wisdom Singh is an Indian writer. So bones of the thorax. So the bone of the thorax, it forms the thoracic cage, and the function of the thoracic cage is to support and to protection of the viscera that lies within the thorax, and two important viscera which lies within the thorax region, that is heart and lungs. So all the bones of the thorax, they will support and protect the heart and lungs which is present within the thoracic cavity. So what are the bones you can see in the thoracic region or in the thorax? You will find in the midline, you will find the sternum. On each side you will find 12 pairs of ribs with their costal cartilages, and at the back you will find 12 thoracic vertebrae. Now let's see, this is the sternum. Now let's see, this is the sternum. You can see this is the picture of a sternum. The sternum has three parts. Upper part is known as manubrium sterni. This is manubrium sterni, and the middle part is known as the body of the sternum. This is body, and the smaller triangular projection at the lower end is known as xiphoid process. So the sternum, it is situated on the just anteromedian portion of the chest. That means in the anterior portion and just in the midline. And this is also known as breastbone because it just lies under the breast. And this is one kind of flat bone. Morphologically, sternum is a flat bone. So it has three parts: manubrium, body, and the xiphoid process. So the manubrium sterni or upper part, it has another name that is known as manubrium sterni or episternum. The middle part is known as the mesosternum, and the lower part, it is also known as the metasternum or xiphoid process. Now the sternum, we will first talk about the manubrium sterni. Okay, then we will talk about the body, then we will talk about the xiphoid process. So before going to each and every part, just have a look on the general feature of the sternum. The upper part of the sternum is broad and thick, but the lower part is thin and pointed, and the anterior surface is slightly rough and convex. If you feel the anterior surface, it will be rough and convex, and but posterior surface is smooth and slightly concave. Let's see from the picture. So its upper end is relatively broader, but lower end is thinner and pointer. And we also told that the anterior surface is rough and convex. If you feel it, then you can realize the surface is rough and convex. But the posterior surface is opposite. Posterior surface is smooth and concave. The manubrium sterni and the body of the sternum, that means upper part and the middle part, they lies in two different angle. They lies in two different angle. Sorry, they lies in two different plane. The manubrium sterni and the body of the sternum. That means the upper part and middle part, they lies in the two different plane. That's why they are present in angulated form. They present an angle to each other, and this angle is 163 degree. So this is the upper part or manubrium sterni, and this is the body of the sternum. Look at that. When these two parts meet, they forms an angle. This is 163 degree angle. What is the name of the angle? The name of the angle is manubrio sterni, manubrio sterni angle, or its another name is sternal angle, or its another name is angle of Lewis. So the angle between the manubrium and the body of the sternum, this is known as Lewis angle or angle of uh, Lewis angle or sternal angle or manubrio-sternal angle. It has three names and it is about 163 degree. And this angle usually increases while we take the inspiration and it decreases while we take the expiration. That means when we inhale the air, it will be increasing the angle, and when we exhale the air, the angle will be decreased. Now move to the features and attachments. At first we will talk about the manubrium. So at first we will talk about the manubrium. So the upper part is known as the manubrium or manubrium sterni, or you can say episternum also. This is roughly quadrilateral in shape. So look at that, it has one margin, 2, 3 and 4. So that's why we are calling this quadrilateral in shape. And what is its location? It lies just opposite to the third and fourth thoracic vertebra. That means anteriorly there is manubrium sterni, and posteriorly there will be third and fourth thoracic vertebra. So it lies at the level of third and fourth thoracic vertebra, or you can say manubrium sterni and third and fourth thoracic vertebra lies in the same level. Next, it is the thickest and strongest part of the sternum. Among the three parts, manubrium sterni, sternal body and the zippet process, this is the strongest as well as the thickest part of the sternum. So what are the features in the manubrium or manubrio sterni? Let's see. The manubrio sterni, it presents two surfaces and four borders. Anteriorly this is anterior surface and posteriorly, that means behind there will be posterior surface, and it has four borders, two surfaces and four borders. Anterior surface and posterior surface, and borders are, this is superior border, this is inferior border, this is right lateral border, and this is the left lateral border. Okay, so two surfaces and four borders. We will talk details about the each surfaces and borders. So at first let's talk about the anterior surface. So in the picture you can see this is the anterior view showing the anterior surface of the manubrium sterni. So look at that, the anterior surface, it gives attachment to the two muscles. One is sternocleidomastoid on each side, and as well as most laterally you will find pectoralis major muscle. So in the anterior surface it gives attachment to the two muscle, that is the sternocleidomastoid and as well as the pectoralis major muscle. Sternocleidomastoid muscle lies medially and pectoralis major lies laterally on the anterior surface of the manubrium sterni. Now let's move to the posterior surface. So this is the picture showing the posterior view or posterior aspect of the manubrium sterni. The posterior surface is relatively smoother and it gives attachment to the two muscles. You can see the first one is the sternohyoid muscle and second one is the sternothyroid muscle. So in the posterior surface, upper part gives attachment to the sternohyoid muscle and lower part gives to the origin to the sternothyroid muscle. So these are the attachment, but in the posterior surface there are some structures related to the posterior surface. So what do you mean by attachment and what do you mean by relation? So any structure that is tightly attached to the bones or gets origin from the bones is known as attachment. They are tightly attached, they cannot be separated. So in case of this we will use the suffix attachment. But when you will use the suffix relation or related, the some structures that are closely situated to any bone but they are not attached, they can be separated, that is known as relation. Now we will learn about the relation of the posterior surface of the manubrium sterni. In the posterior surface of the manubrium sterni, you will find in the lower half, you will find arch of aorta like this. So what is arch of aorta? This is a great artery, a large size artery which is arising from the heart. So just behind the sternum, that means on the posterior aspect of the sternum, you will find the heart. The heart almost looks like this. Okay, this is not true picture, just for understanding purpose. Suppose this is heart. From the heart, from the upper part of the heart, a major great artery arises, that is known as arch of aorta. Arch of aorta. And from the arch of the aorta, three major branches, three major branches arises, three major arteries arises. What are they? From left to right, from left to right, these are known as BCS. BCS. Now what it stands for? B for the brachiocephalic artery, C for the left common carotid artery, and S for the left subclavian artery. So this is heart which lies just behind the sternum, and from the heart a major blood vessel arises, that is known as arch of aorta, and from the arch of the aorta three major branches, three major arteries arises. These are the BCS, from left to right. You have to remember like this, from left to right, left to right brachiocephalic artery or brachiocephalic trunk, whatever you say, brachiocephalic trunk, left common carotid artery, and left subclavian artery. So these are the name of some arteries, and these are closely related to the posterior aspect of the manubrium sterni. So in the exam it will be asked what is the posterior relationship of the sternum. This is very much important. So in the lower half it will be related with the arch of aorta, and in the upper half it is related with the three major branches of the arch of the aorta. This is brachiocephalic trunk, left common carotid artery, and left subclavian artery. So in the posterior aspect, you have seen the attachment of two muscles, sternohyoid, sternothyroid, and in relation in the lower half arch of the aorta, and in the upper half the three major branches arising from the arch of aorta. So we have covered the two surfaces. Now we will move to the border. We will move to the upper border. So the upper border, it is thick and concave. Upper border is thick and concave, and it presents a notch just in the middle that is called suprasternal notch. So in the middle there is a notch or depression. Any depressed part of the bone is known as notch, and this notch, this depressed part of the sternum on the upper border is known as suprasternal notch, or its another name is jugular notch. It is known as suprasternal notch, or another name is jugular notch. And on each side of the suprasternal notch you can see another notch on each side. This is known as clavicular notch. Clavicular notch, because here there is attachment of the clavicle. On each side you will find a bone that is known as clavicle. As the clavicle is attached in this notch, that's why this notch is named clavicular notch. So in each side there is clavicle. Clavicle is attached at the side. That's why the notch is named after this clavicular notch. And the suprasternal notch. Supra means above. Sternal means sternum. So just above the sternum there is a notch that is known as suprasternal notch. So the clavicular notch, it gives attachment to the clavicle, and it forms a joint that is known as sternoclavicular joint. So while studying the bones, we will tell in short what are the joints that is formed by the sternum. So the sternoclavicular joint, this is sternoclavicular joint, which is formed by the clavicular notch of the sternum and clavicle. This is sternoclavicular joint, and this is saddle type of synovial joint. What type of joint this is? So the sternoclavicular joint, which is a joint between the clavicle and the sternum, and this is saddle variety of synovial joint. So in the bones and cartilage class, you will later know by the professor what is synovial joint, what are the types of the synovial joint. Just know this is a saddle type of synovial joint. The sternoclavicular joint is a saddle type of synovial joint. Next, we'll talk about the lateral border. Let's talk about the lateral border. Let's see the pictures. So you can see there are some lateral borders. This is the lateral border on the right side and left side. So the lateral border, it presents two articular facets. You can see one is there and one is there. You will find two articular facets. Facets are just like notch, but they are more smoother for articulation of joint. So the upper facet articulates with the first costal cartilage. So the upper facet and lower facet. The upper facet, it articulates with the first costal cartilage. First costal cartilage. And just lateral to the costal cartilage, the hard part is known as the ribs. So we told you that on the lateral portion, there are 12 pair of ribs with their costal cartilages. So the anterior portion of the ribs is softer in structure, that is known as costal cartilage, and behind the rest of the portion is harder, this is known as ribs. So ribs always remains with the costal cartilages. So the first facet is for the first costal cartilages to form primary cartilaginous joint. So it is attached with the first costal cartilages and it forms primary cartilaginous joint. But the second facet is demifacet. That means it is not completed. Half of the facet present on the manubrium sterni and half of the facet present on the body of the sternum. So that's why it is known as lower demifacet. So the lower demifacet, along with the other demifacet of the body of the sternum, they articulates with the second costal cartilage. So they will attach with the second costal cartilage. And just lateral to the second costal cartilage, the harder part is the second rib. And from this second costal cartilage, this is secondary cartilaginous joint. This is secondary cartilaginous joint. Now moves to the last part of our manubrium sterni, that is the lower border. So the lower border, it articulates with the upper end of the body of the sternum and forms secondary cartilaginous joint. So the between the manubrium sterni and the body of the sternum, the joint is known as the manubrio-sternal joint. This is known as manubrio-sternal joint, or its another name is sternal angle or angle of Lewis that we have already discussed. Okay, and this is one kind of secondary cartilaginous joint. And this sternal angle has so much clinical importance, and there are about 8 to 10 clinical importance on the A.K. Dotto book. Okay, there are so much importance, clinical importance of the sternal angle, and in the exam you have to know each of this. What is the clinical importance of the sternal angle? Now, last of all, the importance of the sternal angle. So, the sternal angle told you this angle between the manubrium sterni and the body of the sternum. So, the sternal angle is the it forms an important bony landmark and it helps in counting the ribs. We showed you in the sternal angle there is a demifacet, and at that demifacet, second costal cartilages is articulated. So, at the sternal angle, you will find the second costal cartilages along with the second ribs. Then the next rib will be third. Then the next rib downward it will be the fourth, then fifth, then sixth. So if you find the sternal angle, if you can feel the sternal angle, if you can identify the sternal angle, so at the level of the sternal angle, you will find the second costal cartilage. And just below it, then count as third, fourth, fifth, sixth costal cartilages and along with the corresponding ribs. So it helps in counting the ribs. Number two, it is situated at the line of junction between two dermatomes, C4 segment above and T2 segment below. Later, you will know what is dermatome, and it is the junction between two dermatomes. C4 you will find above the sternal angle, and below the sternal angle you will find the T2 segment. Actually, in short, the dermatome is the segment of an segment or area of a skin which is supplied by the which is inhabited by the single. So we are talking about the dermatomes. So dermatome is an area of the skin which is supplied by a single spinal nerve root. So it is some area of the skin supplied by the single spinal nerve root. So above the sternal angle, you will find the C4 dermatome that is supplied. That means it is supplied by the is sensation, the area above the sternal angle. Here the sensation, all kind of sensation is supplied by the C4 spinal root, and below the sternal angle it will be supplied by the T2 spinal root. That means that indicates a nerve root. Number three, sternum moves forward and backward at the sternocmanubrial junction or manubrio-sterni junction during respiration. So it is the site of movement during respiration. Number four, it is the junction between the superior and inferior mediastinum. All the things that is situated in the thorax. Actually, mediastinum means the area between the two lungs. The area or the space between two lungs is known as mediastinum. And we divide the mediastinum by two. One is superior mediastinum and it is lower one is inferior mediastinum. So actually the sternal angle, it acts as a junction or demarcation point between the superior and inferior mediastinum. So mediastinum is a space between two lungs. Number five, the trachea bifurcates close to this level. Trachea, which is a part of respiratory passage that will bifurcates into right trachea and left trachea. It will give right branches and left branches at this level. Superior vena cava. This is a vein, one of the greatest vein which carries the venous blood from the upper limb. It pierces the fibrous pericardium. Fibrous pericardium is a covering of the heart, and arch of the azygous vein terminates. So here superior vena cava pierces the one of the layer of the heart, that is the fibrous pericardium, and arch of azygous vein, one vein which carry the venous blood or deoxygenated blood, it terminates at the sternal angle. Number seven, here you will find the beginning and end of the arch of the aorta. We already discussed and showed you the relationship of the posterior surface of the manubrium sterni, and here I showed you the arch of the aorta. So arch of the aorta starts and ends at the sternal angle. Number eight, attachment of superior sternopericardial ligament. This is a one ligament. This is not so much important. And last of all, anterior margins of the both lung and pleura approximate at the sternal angle. The anterior or in front margin of the lungs and pleura. Pleura is the covering of the lungs. Covering of the lungs is known as pleura. So both the lungs and the pleura are approximate or come close to each other at the sternal angle. And last of all, number 11, the thoracic duct. Sorry, number 10, the thoracic duct deviates from right to left behind the esophagus close to this level. So the thoracic duct is a thoracic duct. It carries some lymphatics, and it deviates from right side to left side at this sternal angle level. So these are the 10 importance of the sternal angle, and this picture is taken from the Eke Datta book. So you have to know all the points of the sternal angle. And this is a very common question that is asked in the Viva. What do you mean by sternal angle? What is the measurement? It is about 163 degree. And what are the clinical importance? What are the 10 importance of the sternal angle? So that's all about the manubrium sterni, or upper end of the sternum.